Welcome to Spreaker.com. How y'all doing? This episode, I'm going to talk about an album that I definitely dug. It's 40 years ago. Around this time, it comes in November of the end of this year. The album is Maze, featuring Frankie, Beverly, and Maze live in New Orleans. One of my all-time favorite greatest albums. One of those albums that, you talk about capturing an artist's prime peak, the whole nine. One incredible band, and lived in the South back in the day, and between Texas and Louisiana, different places. Frankie, Beverly, and Maze had the game on lock. And the thing about what I've always admired about Frankie, Beverly, and Maze is simple. They didn't have to have a record out. They didn't have to do anything, because what they already had put out could still pack a house. They definitely had respect. And that's what artists got to always understand, that if you get it right, you don't have to keep running into the well. I mean, it's cool, but you don't have to go to the wishing well if you do it right the first few times, because people will respond. And while there were artists that were hotter and bigger and had more acclaim and more attention, Frankie, Beverly, and Maze could come back 10, 20 years later and still tear your house up. So they didn't matter who was happening. They always had their place, and that's the ultimate form of respect. So when I talk about this album, it was truly incredible. Back in the day, the stage was what separated the men from the boys and the women from the girls. That's just the reality. I don't know. And some people may take that cold, but let me tell you something. When you've seen a great live performer, not saying you can't get down in the studio and you can have hits, but it can be gimmicky and trickery, but there ain't nothing like a live performer, especially back then. Now, obviously understandable now. That comes with limitations with the pandemic, but let's be realistic. There ain't been like a handful of acts that really emerged the last 20 plus years that would be worth paying to go see anyway. But let's go back in time. First song on this album is Changing Times, and I really dug this cut. I like the way the production was on it. It just had a real uplifting spirit to it. And I definitely liked the vibe on it. I thought it was really tight. And I thought that it really, got to the point. It was really a tight song, reflective of the mood. And since, Frankie Beverly came out in the 60s, Changing Times was metaphoric to political and racial and a whole lot of other things. So you could definitely feel the edge of that song. Definitely tight. The next cut that I dug a whole lot was Youre, Payne. He spoke it here. One of the most honest songs ever written. In the last 40 plus years, when you hear Youre, Payne, tell me you can't relate to that. Because that is like straight up honesty. That is an honest song. That is like, you can't get too much more honest than that. That is the truth. That hits, that seals the deal. That is an incredible song. And, it is a reflection of what we deal with in life and in general. I like the acoustic keyboard riff, the program beat. It was tight. And he just nailed it right there. What I call simple, plain, down-home folk music. You can't fake the funk. It was tight. Next cut, of course, was Southern Girl. Love this song. And it was one of them songs that he hit the bullseye. Love the groove of this, love the melody of it. Just one of them songs that just really hit hard. And just one of them songs that you could just sing along to. You felt it. And when you start talking about Southern girls, you're talking about the beauty, the food, the coolness, the vibe. And it takes place in all in there. And that's one of them songs that down-home folk understand. The next cut was Look at California. I always liked the chorus of this. It kind of like a haunting melody. It had a haunting groove about it. But then when it builds up with that percussion, that drum beat, and then his vocals, it hits it on the one. I really love the aspect of it. I like the way they kind of reach that climactic groove. And when you hear it live, it has such a thunderous type of vibe going to it. It's really organic, and I just really like the way he just dug into it and just like took it to another level. And again, if you ever gone to a Frankie Beverly Maze concert, it gives you a whole different experience. It's really something else. And this song really hit the spot. So that was really deep. The next song, Feel That You're Feeling. And it's one thing to hear it on the studio version, but the live version went to a whole nother level. The guitars came up, the groove was just had more, it just really took a whole different vibe to it. And the chorus, it just had a whole, it really lifted your spirits. And that's one of the things about Frankie Beverly Mays, one of the baddest feel-good bands ever. And you see why they resonated with so many people, because the groove, the sentiment, the feel was just so unique. It's like one thing when you listen to it, it's another to experience it live. And like this song was like one of them songs that you could just definitely feel the aura of it and feel the vibe of it. This was really happening. And I like the way the song grooved. The next song was The Look in Your Eyes. And it was a very seductive, smooth, nodding groove. I like the way the bass kicks in. I like the vocals. It's just one of those songs that really get you in a certain sentiment, and the way it just kind of takes a life of its own. Just was able to really capture a real raw energy, a real raw vibe. Just really, had that whole groove and lock with it. That's just one of the things that, again, when you listen to Frankie Beverly Mays, it takes a whole different level to the stage. And like whatever you listen to on the song in its prior existence, it ain't nothing like when you get it in this instance, because then it's kind of like taking a whole life of its own. Charismatic, spiritually uplifting. Just an incredible song, and really showcases the depths. Just really amazing. So I thought that one was really, really, really tight. Skipping some songs because I'm going to get back to the ones that I, go in order. Reason was cool. Was the last track on the album, and it had a cool vibe, had a cool groove going to it. Kind of like one of the most underrated songs on this set, and this album was like a mixture of live and studio, but it definitely, it hit. There's not a bad song on this set, and that's the thing about it. It's one thing when you can capture a band or an act in their peak, their prime, commercial, artistic, and you hear the growth and you hear where they're going, you could definitely feel where it's headed. And this is really one of those, you can't go wrong with this. The next cut, We Need to Live. We Need Love to Live. Strong sentiment, strong vibe, and that's the thing about it. Real earthy, real organic. You feel the love, you feel the water, you feel the soul, you feel the whole urgency when you listen to Frankie Beverly Mays. And that's one of the things that this record does. It sets that standard of how can you love, how can you live, how can you be, how can you touch, taste, feel that whole element and senses. That's musical rewarding. And that's something that, you need to have as part of your life. You really feel that organic feel and tone. So that was really, that's what made that song really happening. And I really liked the way that came about. I really thought that one really touched upon so much of what's happening and what it meant. So that was really deep. The next cut, Before I Let Go. You talk about a cookout jam. You talk about a barbecue cut. Depends on what you were doing. If you're playing volleyball, if you're playing baseball, you're doing horseshoes. It all depends. But that bass line and that groove was just so slick and so bumping. And it had a cold hook and a cold groove. The thing about it is they didn't use any horns. They didn't use any brass. They just hit you with straight groove. And it was raw, but it was on point. It's like the kind of songs that they were barbecue music. They were a picnic. They were a cookout. And you could just get your groove to them. You just was bopping so hard that it made you feel a certain way. And what I liked about Frankie Beverly and Mays, they were in their own musical lane. Really, when you really think about them, it's like the R&B the funk band version of Sade. Do what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it, when they wanted to do it. And they didn't break their neck to cover trends or be trendy or be what was happening. Just did what they did best. And that's the thing you need to get back to, when you can appreciate a musical act. So when you hear something like Before I Let Go, you understand why it's been sampled and covered and looped and done so much, because it hit so hard, but it was that honesty. It's that honesty. And that's what you want from an act, to just hit you with honesty. Don't need the, pyroglyphic, the whole nine. You just need something that just put your teeth into and you can feel the earth move with it. And that's the power of it. So I think that's what makes that cut stand out so strongly, and why it has endured. And that's one of those cuts that you're going to feel the emotion of it. You're going to feel the element of it. It's a strong cut. It definitely hits the spot, and it's timeless. That's one that's timeless. And the last song that I'm going to talk about on this great collection is Running Away. And talk about a political song that speaks about the cause and the environment. You just can't go wrong with this one. That groove was just hyped. It had a cold pocket, the arrangement, the production. When I heard Running Away, I remember hearing it and just always dug the vocals and, the keys, the guitar, the bass. I mean, it just had a cold groove to it. And, when you hear this song, you're like, wow, they just really expose and explored so many avenues. And that was the thing about them. And the thing about Frankie Beverly Mays, they had a rural, down-home folk vibe, but it didn't veer into the blues. It didn't veer on the jazz. It didn't veer on the pop. It didn't veer on the gospel. It had funk to it. Because if you listen to their music, and you could listen to certain grooves that had stepping qualities, it had obviously hip-hop was obviously going to ride it. When you hear their music, it's what you can. It's like it's feel good music. You can't put no label when the music hits the soul, but it encompasses all of the things that you want in classic music and what you want to feel from the heart, the emotions, and the soul, and how it tackles so much. So, and this is one of the greatest live albums and one of the greatest with tracks on it that you can imagine, because it's the kind of record that it endures. And I always say this all the time. Some people get mad when people question how come artists from yesteryear look down and frown upon artists today or something. Well, I say this. If you can hold a record that still sounds good 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years later, you did what you're supposed to do. But if your attention span is wasted and done after a record after a year or two, it ain't done what it's supposed to do. And if I'm not feeling the song 5, 10 years later, it was just something that was hot for the moment. Don't get mad at me because it was like hot fries that tasted good when they first came out, but they got soggy, salty, and greasy, and they were just dry by the time you got home. Whose fault is that? So if you got expectations, you're going to want to keep that bag hot and fresh. And there's a difference between artists who know how to do it and artists who pretend to do it. And Frankie Beverly Mays always knew how to do it. Live in New Orleans is one of my all-time favorite live albums. It's one of those records that, it's like a required listen for me. I love the different nuances, and I love where they were capturing, where they were going. It's the best of both worlds, too, because they weren't a compromising band, but they were accessible. And what that means is that you do what works for you, know your audience, and you know how to move and groove. That's what you want an artist. That's what you hope that an act can do for you, and that's what you have expect. So, this is one of my favorite records. And the thing about I also remember on the cover, it's also this album was dedicated to the brothers and sisters who tragically lost their lives in Atlanta, Georgia. May their souls rest in peace during the Atlanta child murder. So it came with that message as well. Very critical time period. And just reflect on this album. Please feel free to share your thoughts and takes about Frankie Beverly Mays live in New Orleans. And if you had this record, please tell me what you thought about it, how you remember it, and some of your favorite songs by Frankie Beverly Mays. I always look forward to hearing feedback on it. And we'll be talking again really soon. Peace. God bless. Take it easy. Stay safe out there. Be careful. I'm out.